I can remember when you had the first one at the Montfort Center, the first breakfast. And Phyllis Sherrill told me, she didn't ask me to come. She said, be there. It didn't look anything like this morning, or it wasn't anywhere near the number of people. Well, here we are 43 years later. And before I make the remarks from the county, I'm going to be personal here because I want to remind you of a place that even though it's not here today, it's still active. And that's Stevens Lee High School. Right here on the dish, you have the class of 1962 president, 61, and our speaker is 60. Now, did I leave it in 63? I'm sorry. See, I was gone. Yeah. But this is, we can't forget, because we started in A score, and it's interesting. Well, it's something to say. We're still going today. And I never thought I'd be where I am today, because I've never liked politics. Can you believe that? But now let's talk about why we're here. I'm proud of how our Board of Commissioners has enacted policies that help grow Dr. King's dream of a beloved community. We voted for and found funding reparations. We've established a non-discrimination ordinance and implemented a process for our community to access its supports. We built an Office of Equity and Human Rights, and we have approved a strategic plan that includes equity not just as a goal, but as a foundation. I think of one of Dr. King's quotes that doesn't get as much attention. He said, every man must decide whether he will walk in the light of created altruism or in the darkness of destructive selfishness. Through the approach that our board has taken, we are doing our best to empower our staff to walk in that light. I feel confident that every person in the room is aware of the work happening with the Community Reparations Commission. And that's not just because there are flyers in your seats. We are supporting the work of that commission, while at the same time we are working with the outside consultant to conduct a cease the harm audit to identify those spaces where the city and county are continuing harm. You'll see that first update from that audit at the next Reparations Commission meeting. Identifying spaces internally where we can grow our learning and empathy. These include ongoing professional development opportunities that nearly 1,000 Buncombe County employees have participated in, and also multiple affinity groups to help grow our safe spaces. We know that when we build compassion internally, it translates into better levels of service across Buncombe County. This compassion also extends to the least of us. Our community paramedics are creating genuine relationships with our unhoused population to help connect them to care, treatment, and resources. At the same time, our staff has been directed to find more ways to build housing, whether that's in the form of a low-barrier shelter, a more affordable house, so our community of highly qualified educators and first responders can live in Buncombe County. We are all here today because when we hear Dr. King's call, what are you doing for others? We are moved to action. In Buncombe County, we are committed to heeding that call and using our collective resources to serve our entire Buncombe County community. And before I sit down, it would be a dereliction of duty if I didn't recognize, you've heard from the commissioners, we recognize them, but I want to recognize all of our employee workers here, whether it's the Sheriff's Department, first responders, whoever. Please stand. All Buncombe County. Thank you, and enjoy the breakfast.
And thank you for those words of welcome and inspiration, Mayor Manheim and Commissioner Whiteside. Now, as we are here and thinking and looking around this space and thinking about what has brought us here this morning, as we remember Dr. King and the work that he inspired and the work that people have done and continue to do, another one of our central goals of this prayer breakfast is to raise money. It's to raise money for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s Association Scholarship Fund. These funds will assist high school students to further their academic journey. We look back into this past year, we look back into 2023, and we look at the amazing recipients of the scholarships from this fund. One thing I want you to put into your minds, to really think about, it's because of people like you, folks like you giving generously to support this community. 2023 was a record year for our scholarship fund. The association had its largest fund. We had $50,000. You should clap about that. $50,000, which allowed us to give 15 scholarships. Largest number of scholarships with the largest number of amounts in those scholarships in the association's history. And that's because of you and your generosity. Again, give yourselves a hand for that. Because those scholarship recipients are working, striving to emulate Dr. King's dream of racial equality and social justice and community service. A student can be rewarded a scholarship that can be used at any public or private 2- or 4-year college. Qualifying students must be residents of Buncombe County and seniors in high school. They must submit an application that demonstrates their efforts to help further Dr. King's legacy of anti-racist activism, nonviolent protest, or community building. The 2024 applications are currently available on the association's website, which can be found at mlkasheville.org. Also, as you came in, you passed, and as you go out, you'll pass. There is a resource table right here as you leave that has 2024 scholarship applications on. So if you know someone, or if you are someone that's thinking, hey, I'd like to try for that, pick up an application or tell someone where to go on the website. We're lucky to have today one of the 2023 scholarship recipients, who is Madeline Louise Duffy. And at this time, I'm going to ask Madeline to come up and say a few words about her scholarship. Madeline.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning. I hope you all are enjoying your breakfast on this beautiful Saturday morning, honoring Dr. King and his work. I wanted to come up here and thank the Martin Luther King Jr. Association of Asheville and Buncombe County and the Deerfield community for providing me financial support as I pursue my education at UNC Chapel Hill, studying public policy and environmental studies. This support has allowed me to deepen my understanding of environmental justice and take action in the environment in my community. Specifically, I wanted to talk about environmental justice. Environmental justice, for those of you who don't know, is the action against environmental degradation targeting minority communities. I wanted to share something I learned in my history class last semester about environmental justice. Warren County is a county in the northern part of North Carolina who is primarily African American and Hispanic communities in poverty. These communities are suffering from toxic waste in their water systems due to the runoff of a nearby chemical plant. Despite their efforts, little has been done to be able to combat these issues, and due to this, they are suffering from a lot of health and other problems. This is just one example of environmental justice in specifically impoverished and minority communities that Dr. King advocated for justice for. And also, I wanted to thank this financial support I got for this education with pursuing environmental action. Specifically, I'm a part of the Student Environmental Action Coalition at UNC, and we are currently advocating for more composting opportunities around campus and more. In the future, with this support, I'm able to join the community garden on campus, which focuses on food insecurity and providing those in need with fresh vegetables and fruits. Thank you again for this opportunity, financial support, and I hope you all enjoy your breakfast.
Well, again, thank you, Madeline, for coming up from Chapel Hill, and I think as you heard when you said that you were going to Carolina, there were some people that were whooping for that. I grew up in Durham, so I spent a lot of time on Duke campus, and I went to Asheville State, so I still can cheer on Madeline, so I don't hold her that she's Carolina Tar Heel against her. But we are so happy to, as being the association, be a part of your pursuit of personal and really professional goals in life. And think about Madeline and other scholarship recipients' resilience and efforts reflect our community and Dr. King's belief in education, in the importance of education. Now, it's not just because I'm a teacher I say that, but it's because I do see the power, and our community understands the power of education. Because as Dr. King says, and I quote, "We must remember that intelligence is not enough. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education. The complete education gives one not only power of concentration, but worthy objectives upon which to concentrate." And that's what you heard Madeline saying. As she gets educated, she has concrete objectives of how to use that education. And that's what drives us to have this scholarship fund, to provide these scholarships. Because, as Dr. King constantly stressed, education enables us to not only obtain knowledge, but then to use it to fight against hate and deceit in the pursuit of a fair and just society. So, today, on behalf of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Association of Asheville and Buncombe County, I am asking you to invest in Asheville and Buncombe County. Invest in Asheville and Buncombe County's future. Invest in its students. Students like Madeline and all those who have received scholarships from this fund, who are working to personify the legacy of Dr. King. Please donate to the Association Scholarship Fund. because your donation will lessen the financial burden for students who want to be part of the effort to create an inclusive and empowering Asheville and Buncombe County. Students that want to bring about change, positive change. Now you can go to our website again, MLKasheville.org, and be able to donate there. Or even better, as you sat down at your tables, you can use the pens and the envelopes that you find there to the pledge cards that you have found on your tables. That pledge card that looks like this. It tells how you can fill out, you can put your name, you can put your address. The envelope has the address, you can mail it in, you can decide, how much you want to donate, put in your check into the envelope, seal it up, and if you don't want to mail it, you'll be able to turn it in right now during the breakfast. Also, as you can see on the pledge card, you can designate, please, to the scholarship fund. Now, also, you'll see there are other actions that we try to do, programs that the association does. You can give to those if you want, but the main thing we really want is support for the scholarship fund. Also, you see on your table the yellow sheet of paper, which means that you might say, oh, I don't have my checkbook with me, or I might not have any cash. Well, it's 2024, 21st century, that's why we have the yellow sheet, okay? So it tells you if you want to go to PayPal again, or if you want to pay online, you go to the website. It tells you how. If you go to the website, what you need to do. You go to the website there at www.mlkasheville.org, and you click tickets and donations, and then you choose general donations, and it reads on down. You go to the donation tab, and you're able to do it electronically. Powers of the 21st century. But the main thing that we're asking, the main thing that we really want you to consider is, as the Just Us Choir gets ready to give us the next selection, for you to take the time to go ahead and donate. Fill out the card, put in your donation into the envelope. And as the choir sings, the ushers that help you find your seat, they'll be coming around and they'll be able to collect your donation, be able to collect those envelopes. So if you have one, just raise your hand as they come around, and they'll come to you, and you'll be able to put that card in there. Now, again, you're saying, well, man, they're really pushing the money. I'm not trying to sell you a car. I'm not trying to sell you a house. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm asking you to invest. Invest in this community's future. Invest in Asheville and Buncombe County. Because again, I don't think everybody really thinks about it. After 43 years, last year, 2023, because of you, we had $50,000 that we were able to give to 15 students. Well, the whole idea, the whole goal, again, what are we striving for? To do better every time. So what I'm pushing is for us to get past that 50,000, so we can get past those 15. More money, more students can be helped. A bigger picture and hope for the future. So please, if you want to give, if you're able to give, and you're able to give now, fill out the card, put it in an envelope. As the choir sings, raise your hand, and the ushers will come around for you to be able to put it into the envelope. If you're saying, well, I can't do it, but you have your phone, take a picture of that yellow sheet, so then you can go home and get it electronically and do it that way. So now, let us keep on celebrating our scholarship winners and the idea and the power of education. The Just Us Choir, Unity Choir, will be singing a selection written by Kai Beard. Now, I always have as it says in the program, by Kai Beard, and the song is entitled, I Win. And remember, as the choir sings, and you have a donation, raise your hand, and the ushers will come around to collect it. worked on these programs, I want to introduce you. A lot of you do know Dr. Simmons, some of you don't. But Dr. Simmons is a civil rights pioneer who, in high school, was a member of the Asheville Student Committee on Racial Equality. ACE score. Again, as our Commissioner Whiteside talked about ACE score, Dr. Simmons was part of that. We know Dr. Simmons, or I know Dr. Simmons because she went on to break the color barrier in the 1960s as the first African-American person to attend all alma mater, Mars Hill College, now known as Mars Hill University. And we know as you look at that souvenir journal that Dr. Simmons founded this association in 1982. And we know the work that goes on, the work that she's done. She holds an honorary degree from AB Tech Community College and honorary doctorate degrees from Lenora Ryan University and from Mars Hill University. So please give a welcome to Dr. Simmons.
Warm greetings again. Earlier this morning, the first voice you heard was mine saying, "Would you please take your seats?" Well, I'm back again. Please take your seats. I love you. I wish to express my gratification and heartfelt appreciation for the commitment and continued service to the Martin Luther King Jr. Association of Asheville and Buncombe County by first recognizing the association's board of directors. They are Jonathan McCoy, Vice President, and I don't mind if you stand. I do want people to recognize you. They all worked so hard. As I said, 1,060 people this morning, and this is just the first day of our celebration. Dr. McCoy also chairs the Community Outreach Providing Empowerment Initiatives. Dr. Monique Taylor, our treasurer. Jennifer Nielsen, secretary. Other board members include Darron, my darling Darron, chair of the Prayer Breakfast Committee and my executive assistant. Dr. Elizabeth Colton, chair of the Candlelight Service Committee. Vanessa Funderburg, co-chair of the Peace March and Rally. Dr. Carlton Smith, chair of the Scholarship Committee. David King and Sarah Thornburg. In addition to our board members, the following individuals are part of our celebration committee, which helps to with the implementation of the Peace March and Rally, Candlelight Service, and Prayer Breakfast. Patrick Crudup, Elizabeth Custavold, Dr. Sarah Him-Helderberg, and Apostle Inez Ray. Thank you. Our association also appreciates the contributions made by the Asheville Buncombe Technical Community College, President John Gossett, Aisha Media Group, Black Box, Crown Plaza Resort, XL Media Group, our morning ushers that had this great job. and some of them are our friends from Mission Health. Dr. Joseph Fox, Kyle and Donna Simmons, and Nomura Blakely. Again, thank you for sharing your time, your talents, and your skills. I want to thank you in the audience for being here this morning for the 43rd Annual Prayer Breakfast Celebration.
Thank you, Dr. Simmons, for that. And as you know, the vice president position is not that I'm the second person in charge. I'm the first person that gets the task. Dr. Simmons calls, okay, yes ma'am. I see that, yes ma'am. And so even as I came in this morning, first question I asked is, Dr. Simmons here? Well, no, she hasn't come in this morning. I said, okay, I know I need to be standing tall, ready for her to tell me what I need to be doing. So, but thank you again for those words. Now, I'm going to take a page out of my provost at Mars Hill University does this whenever we have a gathering. So if you'll indulge me, I'm going to take a selfie of the group. So we'll live on. So he always goes when we have graduation and everything else. So everybody smile. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. And the reason I'm doing that is because this is where we really come to the moment of, you've been here all day, they've been thanking everybody, but again, just as you heard, was Dr. Simmons. The main thing is thanking you. So I want, if you're able to be able to stand up, if you will now take the time to stand up, because this is where we're going to thank you. So if you can, please rise and understand that we understand in this time of anxiety, be it because of an illness or identity or ideology, all the different ways people are finding ways to be divided, you have made a conscious effort to get up this morning. You woke up this morning and your minds are engaged, your ears are open, because now I'm going to invite Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. board member, Dr. Elizabeth Colton, to come here to the podium and introduce our keynote speaker. And following that, we will hear from him.
I want to start by reminding you of what the theme is for this year. Every year we choose a theme for the Martin Luther King whole weekend celebration. And we look back at the teaching and the speaking, the writings of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and we find quotations from him that we think that could be the theme for this whole thing. And this year, it's still marching forward. Fighting for justice never ends. And if anything, that's our speaker, and I'm going to be telling you about that. But he has his whole life continued marching forward and fighting for justice and knowing that that fight never ends. You can look through, and I urge you to please look and read through the whole bio, his bio with all the list of accomplishments. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm going to give you some special, again, sort of personal highlights, personal not just for me and for him and for all, and for those of us who grew up here in Asheville together. We were in A-Score together. And for all of you, I want you to hear about this. So I'm going to give you some special things. There was a group in the late 1950s at Stevens Lee High School, which was the black high school, because many of you don't know, you can't imagine it. This was a very segregated city with Jim Crow laws controlling. There were no places we could even meet together, except in churches, some churches and synagogues, and a few community centers that were not controlled by the law. So, and the schools were completely separate. And yet there was a feeling in the air. The Brown v. Board of Education ruling came out in 1954 in May, and I can remember that as a little third grader here in Asheville, at what was then the William Randolph School. But by 1959, nothing had happened. Nothing. And so there was a group of people at Stevens Lee High School, including James Ferguson, who thought, you know, maybe we could make a difference. And there was a feeling in the air. There were some of us in the white schools thinking the same thing. And so the group at Stevens Lee said, we can make a difference. And I'm so glad the mayor talked today about the young people, the ambassadors here at the high schools. The teenagers can make a difference. And actually, that's what we thought. And James thought, and his group that founded the Asheville Student Committee on Racial Equality, which was extremely unusual, by the way, and James and I were discussing this last night. So much of the civil rights movement was starting, and they were older people or college people. But in Asheville, we didn't really have a leading college. There was no black college here, like there was in Greensboro, where the sit-ins were starting, or in Durham, for example, or all over the different places in the country. And so the idea was, well, let's make a difference as teenagers, young people. And so they founded A-SCORE. And in the 1959, when James was a senior, he was president of the student body at Stevens Lee High School, and he and friends, and then brought in a few others like me who were interested, who were at the segregated, I was then in junior high at David Millard, and then at Lee Edwards, which was the white school. And we started joining together. He became, James E. Ferguson was the first president of A-SCORE here.
That's right.
And you hear all of us talking about it. This like molded our lives. I think we all feel that way. And so he was here, he graduated in 1960 from Stevens Lee High School. He went, and that was when he left Asheville, I think. But his heart never left Asheville. And his influence. He went to North Carolina Central University, graduated in... Graduated in 1964, and he went straight to Columbia University in New York City to the law school. He graduated from there in 1967. He decided to come back to North Carolina, and he went to the bigger city of Charlotte. And he was, this is incredible, but it was true. He was the 7th black lawyer in that city. You know, you can't imagine. He married another of our friends, the dear late Barbara Turman, and they had 3 children. One of whom is here. Taj, could you just stand a minute? Yeah. He went on, and immediately in Charlotte, he started, and not just in Charlotte, but all over North Carolina, and he immediately began shining as a trial lawyer. He helped found his law firm, which we're probably going to hear more about in just a little bit. The Ferguson, Stein, Chambers. Yeah, okay, thank you. In Charlotte, he became one of the 100 leading trial attorneys in the whole United States. James is known as a super lawyer, actually accredited that way. He became the president of the National Institute of Trial Advocacy, of NITA, N-I-T-A. And in that work, he went to South Africa and became a co-founder of South Africa's whole program for trial advocacy, even beginning still in apartheid that went on as today. One of the things that I want to conclude with, but emphasize, is James's influence has been from his childhood here in Asheville. And I think all of us know, we think about growing up and we think how older people, older children have influence on us. And often that older child, or teenager, whoever, doesn't know about the influence that they were having in all kinds of directions. I'm one of the people who was influenced by James, and he didn't know that influence. And what he was doing was he was talking early on in the late 1950s, right here in Asheville, about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his preaching and speaking out for nonviolence in the tradition of Mahatma Gandhi. And he was teaching about and talking about, he and his friends and all of us in A-Score were talking about nonviolence as the way to bring about some kind of peaceful relations and to make change. And I'm going to mention one friend that he had an influence on in his childhood growing up in the Blanton Street neighborhood. Some of y'all were growing up there, I think. And one of the people he influenced, who sadly left us late last year, Diane Blakely, and many of you may remember Diane. She and I were the same age. We were in the class of '63 at the two segregated high schools. She was at Stevens Lee, I was at Lee Edwards. But we became very, very good friends through A-Score and through the Episcopal Young Church people. And Diane and I became friends. James, I told James about this. She and I used to talk about Martin Luther King Jr. And she told me that James was the one who introduced her to the teachings and the speaking of Martin Luther King Jr. And it's the ripples. It's the ripples of influence you don't even know. And it's so important, and I give it to the young people here who are the ambassadors for this. So James, your whole positive leadership and influence is spread far and wide. Your mentoring, your teaching, you've taught at top American universities, many law schools. You've taught at schools, you've been a mentor, you have no idea. But we're all here to honor you and thank you for coming today. You as a great lawyer, a teacher, a mentor, a friend. And last night, James and I started sharing these same stories. And the stories about Martin Luther King Jr. and what we felt back then in the 1950s here in Asheville, segregated Asheville. So we welcome today a great leader of courage and compassion and influence, James E. Ferguson II. Thank you.
As I was listening to my newly reconnected friend, Liz Colton, do that introduction, And I combined that with this magnificent fair, with people of goodwill coming together. It occurred to me to tell you the truth, but if I could tell you that truth and sit down, you would be happy. I'm speechless. But they told me I couldn't come here and tell you that. And sit down. It is indeed a very, very special honor for me to just be here among people that I know growing up, and to see and meet new people of goodwill who come together in a way that I have rarely seen in a room where 1,000 people, I guess I should say 1,000 hungry people, came together to eat breakfast and honor a man who has been a tremendous influence in my life personally, in the lives personally of many of you, but more importantly in the lives of people around the world. Martin Luther King was a man who devoted himself to making the world a better place than it was when he found it. And he devoted his life to that. I have to get a little bit personal to tell you that although I had the honor and pleasure of meeting Dr. King as we were putting A Score together, I got to know him at a distance, and the great work that he did and the great power and influence that he wielded everywhere he went. But I have to share with you today that I had a personal experience when I was a young lawyer working in Charlotte. I was selected by a man who was running for governor to be his campaign manager. That was Dr. Reginald Hawkins. He was the first African American to run for governor of North Carolina in the 20th century. So he was a client of ours at the firm. So he came to me one day and said, "Fergie, I think I'll run for governor." I said, "Well, Hawkins, that's great. And I wish you well." He said, well, wait a minute. I want you to be my campaign manager." I said, "Well, Reggie, I have no political experience. But if you're crazy enough to ask me to be your campaign manager, I'm crazy enough to do it." So that sort of got me started with some of the political stuff that we did as a law firm. But I shall never forget that although I met Dr. King for a few moments back in 1960, when he was organizing the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which was a group of students who were involved in doing protest work throughout the South and around the country. And I happened to be one of the only high school students there at that meeting. Because as you remember, SNCC, as it came to be called Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, really was a group of college students who were involved in the sit-in movements, and they were bringing them together to coordinate the movement, so to speak. And who better than Dr. King and the woman behind Dr. King that you never hear about, Ella Baker, who was one of the greatest organizers. So that was my introduction to Dr. King. It was at a distance, but I can tell you, even now, I think about the aura that surrounded the room when Dr. King walked in. And it's something innate about us as human beings. We know greatness when we see it. And when you're sitting in a room, as I was, a lowly high school student back in 1960, and a great man who was not really at the height of his greatness at that time, but a certain aura descended on the room. when Dr. King walked in the room. And if you think that's a grand experience, it grew, and it was even greater to hear this man speak. He made you feel like you could accomplish anything in the world that you set out to accomplish. And that was the effect that he had just by walking in a room and talking to people, in this case young people, who were gathered there looking for a way to make a difference in the society that we were destined to grow up in. So it was at that moment that I realized that I wanted to really and truly become a part of making a difference in what this country could be, but not just this country and not just the world, but Asheville, North Carolina, where I grew up in a city that was completely segregated. Everything you did was determined by race. We couldn't have had a meeting even approaching anything like this back when I was growing up in the 40s and 50s in Asheville. We just didn't sit in rooms with people of a different race and a different color. And not only did you not just do that, you couldn't. Because there were laws in effect at that time that said, although you had a decision in 1896 that said segregation laws have their limits, you are still separate but equal. And no one much stopped to think, if you're separate, you're not equal. It's inherently wrong. You can't be. But still, here we were, children, growing up in a city in the South, and they were all over the South, where everything you did was determined by race. And gradually, we began to see and understand that had to change, but if it was going to change, we had to become a part of that change. So it's hard to imagine that today, but Liz told you there were times even then when we recognized that we needed and had to make a difference, that we couldn't find anywhere to get together with blacks and whites. So when Liz and I reconnected just a few months ago, a year or so ago, we reminisced about how we happened to get together, but we had to find a place that would allow black students and white students to sit down together, to talk together, and to plan together. We take that for granted now. You come to this room, and it's full of people of different races, and they're all enjoying a meal together and talking together, and we just assume that it's always been that way. But it hasn't been. It was the result of struggle, and not just the struggle and leadership of Dr. Martin Luther King, but it was the struggle of ordinary people who realized there's something wrong with this, and we got to make a change. And we were fortunate to be able to make some change. But now keep in mind, I'm going back to just the 1960s. And the work we did then, we didn't know what the result would be. We didn't know in 1960 that in Asheville, North Carolina, in 2024, we would be meeting in a huge room with, they said there are about, what I think they said, 1,000 hungry people in here eating breakfast. That was unheard of back then. But today we come in and we meet and we mingle, and it's just assumed that it's been that way all the time. But I can tell you it wasn't that way all the time. And we knew there was something about it that wasn't right and that we had to change. My son Taj, who is here, and I think you met him just a minute ago, when we would come to Asheville, when they were growing up. My wife, Barbara, grew up right over here on Grill Street, and we actually met and started dating through A School. There's a story about that, but I'm not going to engage you in that right now. But Taj and my son Jay and my daughter Katie sometimes tell me, Daddy, when we were growing up, we thought Asheville was an all-black city. I'm scratching my all-black city. I mean, I knew that Asheville had a small black population, which unfortunately and kind of scarily is even diminishing. Because at that time it was about, I think, 14-15% black. But that was the all-black city. But that tells you a little bit about what life was about, even as my children were growing up. Their lives was centered around our family. And my wife Barbara's family was from here. Of course, my family was here. But what they saw was a place that they were coming to, and the people that they intermingled with were all black. And they didn't know that there was some white folks on the other side of town. In fact, there were a whole lot of them. But that's what we experience as a society. We take that for granted now, but happily, unfortunately, things are different. And while I'm on the past, let me just say one other quick thing. Todd was introduced to you as my son, and I have 2 other children in my immediate family. But I have another son who's with you today. And you're actually looking at him right now. And one day soon, we hope we're going to look at him in the governor's mansion. That's Josh Stein. You look at Josh and you look at me, you say, wait a minute, there's something not right about this picture. And that's true, it's not something you ordinarily see, but I'll just share with you that Josh's father was a lawyer that I worked with for the first 45 years of my practice. As a matter of fact, when we started the firm, the first racially integrated firm in North Carolina, Adam and I met each other when he and I both were coming to Charlotte to work with one of the greatest lawyers I ever met in my life, Julius Chambers, to start that. Thank you for doing that. But what I want to tell you is, there were 4 of us. It was Chambers and me, black, Adam Stein, and a lawyer named Jim Lanning that we had met. So Adam Stein, Jim Lanning, white, Chambers and I, black. So, we talked about it. Chambers had already been doing great things even before we came. But we talked about what the name of the law firm was going to be. And we couldn't quite figure that out because Adam and I came at the same time, Lanning a little later. Chambers, of course, was the one who started the firm. So we said, we got a major problem here. We got to figure out what the name of this law firm is going to be. So we said, well, it's a problem we can solve. It's a problem we can solve. There's a solution to every problem. So we said, well, we're going to solve this problem because we got to tell people who we are. So we came up with the brilliant, fantastic idea of how to solve that problem. And we decided the best way to solve it was to flip a coin and see who won. And whoever won the coin flip was going to be the second name in the firm. So Adam and I flipped a coin, and I guess I don't have to tell you, I lost. Because the original name of the firm was Chambers, Stein, Ferguson, and Lanning. So that's how that happened. So if anybody was thinking it was hard to figure out, or you get a problem that's too hard to figure out, flip a coin. And you'll be okay. But that was truly one of the greatest experiences of my life, was finding people who had similar ideas that I shared and coming together with them to try to change the face, to change the history of North Carolina. Keep in mind that in 1967, when we came together to start the firm, everything in North Carolina was segregated at the time, including schools. And I know the schools were segregated because I was in the 7th grade when the Brown versus Board of Education decision came down from the Supreme Court in 1954. And I remember telling my 7th grade teacher at that time, Ms. Logan, I'll confess I was kind of the teacher's pet. So I spent time with her, and she'd take me to her car thing, get a car fixed and that kind of thing. And she always listened to the news. So there was this news program called Pauline Fredericks and the News. And Pauline Fredericks came on, I think, 2 or 3 o'clock every day. And Ms. Logan made certain that she listened to that. But she and I were I was riding with her to take her car to the shop when that announcement came. And I remember saying, Ms. Logan, I'm so glad to hear that because I would like to go to Lee Edwards High School next year. I was in the 8th grade at that time, I think. And that was my idea. I said, the Supreme Court of the land has said that schools will no longer be segregated. So instead of going to this high school that's boxed in on a hill and could not expand, could not have stadiums, could not have athletic buildings and recreational facilities, all we could do was go to school, spend the day, leave, because there was very little you could do on the school ground. There was nothing there. So I was delighted that the Supreme Court of the United States had determined where I was going to go to school the next year. And next year the school opened, and I found that I had to go to Stevensley High School, the castle on the hill, as we call it, which was all black. So in the 10th grade, I woke up the morning the day school started, thinking I would go to Lee Edwards High School, and I was told, no, you can't go to Lee Edwards. So to make a long story short, I had planned to go to Lee Edwards every day. I had planned to go every year from the time I was in the 8th grade. And I'm here to tell you today I've never gone to Lee Edwards High School because it didn't happen then. The truth of the matter is, even though the highest court in the land had declared that segregation in public schools can no longer exist, that black children and white children will now go to school together, and that this decision is to be implemented with all deliberate speed. And I can tell you there was a lot of deliberateness and no speed. So I thought in the 9th grade I would go to Lee Edwards. I thought in the 10th grade, the 11th grade, the 12th grade, and I didn't go because nothing changed for that period of time. And that was one of the things that made me want to get into law, to do something, to try to make a difference. There were other things as well, but that always stood out to me. So it happened that in all of my public school years, I never got a chance to go to Lee Edwards, this sprawling high school looking like a college campus with the sprawling grounds and buildings, and everything was well kept, and it was like going from hell to heaven if I had been able to do that, but it didn't work out that way. So as it turned out, ironically enough, after I started practicing law in Charlotte with Chambers and Adamstein and Young, and we were filing suits on school desegregation, trying to get schools to do what for the past 10 years they haven't done, and that's to desegregate the school. One of the schools that we sued was a system called Asheville City School. So, you know, I can't help but reflect on the irony of that. Here for years, I'm planning to go to Lee Edwards High School, and I didn't get to go. But I was proud and pleased that we were able to do something to allow some students, some African-American students, to get the kind of education they should have had for hundreds of years before that. And that's the way things happen in our society. And that's what happened with the establishment of A School back in 1960. Now there were many benefits that came from A School, but I want to tell you one, because I may as well get it out. Some people know it. I was the first president of A School, and I think that's because somebody else volunteered, stepped up, and I said we ought to do something, so I did that. And we had a group of students, dedicated students, who were behind us. Al was a part of that group, and I think Orlean may have been involved at that time as well. But we met, and we talked about Dr. King's nonviolent approach, and some of us even went to training to figure out how the nonviolent thing was. Because everybody was, around that time, was protesting, and college students were getting arrested, and that sounded exciting to us, so we wanted to join that. So we said, well, we want to do that too. And somehow or another, we found at least enough wisdom to understand, although you want to do that, it's not something you just do. You figure out how to do it. So we contacted some adults in the community. I could call their name, but that doesn't mean that much to you. But I do remember one name. There was a man named Will Rowland who ran a jewelry shop on the corner of Eagle Street and what's that street? Market Street, Eden Market. Yeah. So we asked Mr. Rowland, along with 4 or 5 other adults, to be advisors to us, to keep us out of trouble, help us along the way. And they all agreed to do it. But I mentioned Mr. Rowland because we probably spent more time with him than anyone else. And he devoted himself to it so much so that he actually hurt his business because he was giving so much time to mentoring us as students. So he has always been a hero in my mind. So this stuff didn't just happen. We had to do some things to make it happen. But as high school students, given the guidance that we had from adults in the community, we were meeting with the owners of department stores, with the managers of lunch counters in those stores, to try to negotiate a peaceful solution to this problem of segregation that affected everything we did in life. And in Asheville, as you probably know, there were no sit-ins. We planned to have sit-ins, and we thought we could just go sit in and get a hamburger when they got around to it, but that didn't happen. We learned the nonviolent approaches first to identify the problem, and then once you identify the problem, to try to negotiate a solution to the problem. You don't just go take over somebody's lunch counter and you have to say, how about a hamburger? You talk to somebody about that, but we did. And as students, we met with department store owners and lunch counter managers and all the things you do when you identify a problem and try to get a solution to it. And initially, we were totally rebuffed and told, no, we can't do it. Citizens in this county and city won't allow it. But ultimately, through the guidance of Mr. Rowland and other adults with him, we decided to negotiate with the lunch counter managers and owners of the department stores to try to get it done. And ultimately, we reached an agreement. And the agreement was that the lunch counters would serve us when we showed up. And we would sit down, we would eat, and then we would leave. It so happens that there were whites in the community that we had contacted and solicited their support, and they agreed to go with us, so that we sat down at the lunch counter with whites who demonstrated by their presence that this is not the end of the world. This is okay. You can eat beside somebody of a different color skin. And so we did that. The lunch counter managers and owners knew we were coming. They served. And that's why you never read that Asheville, North Carolina had sit-ins. We did it another way. And it worked. And so through that experience, we learned that through the example of Mahatma Gandhi and also Dr. King by this time was doing it, that there was a way to accomplish something that might be different from confrontation and conflict. And we were able to do that. But you know all of that because Asheville, even today, finds a way to resolve many of its issues through discussion and cooperation rather than conflict. I think I know that Asheville, and I know there's a lot of disagreement about this, but I think Asheville is one of 3 cities in the whole United States of America that has adopted a reparations resolution. And the only one in the South. The only one in the South. And I know that the city council adopted that resolution, 4 years ago. I don't know, it hasn't been that long. And I know that not much visibly has happened as a result of that. I believe that it's going to make a difference, and I believe ultimately that Asheville and the other 2 cities in the country that have adopted that approach will make progress, and they will show that there are ways to move beyond the racial inequities that still abound in our society, and that it can be done through legislation, it can be done through cooperation. It can be done, and that to me is part of the legacy of Dr. King with his nonviolent approach, where you try to find a way to make a difference in society. You try to find a way to lift those who have been left out. And I can tell you very quickly that at the beginning of this country, everybody, except a few rich white men, were left out of the Constitution of the United States. Native Americans were left out. African Americans were left out. Women were left out. Poor people were left out. Young people were left out. So you look at all of society and you see that everybody was left out except a few rich white men. And that's why you read about George Washington and you read about John Adams and Thomas Jefferson and others who participated in the convention in Philadelphia back in 1789 to found this country with a constitution. And it was a small group of white men who were property owners. And that was the vision at that time. I know now we say, America is all about give me your tired, give me your poor, give me your whole masses yearning to be free, as though it was always that way. It wasn't. It was a few rich white landowners who wanted to secure their wealth, and they wanted to be free from the dictates of England to do that, and they got together. And that's how it all happened. And our task that comes to us today is the same task that those who were not part of that select group that met in Philadelphia in 1789 to form the United States of America. So everybody was left out. Poor people were left out. Sick people were left out. Women were left out. Young people were left out. Anybody who didn't have land and money were left out. So it was a constitution that was to secure the rights of a handful of people. And that's important because we have this legacy of trying to promote inclusion. And it has been a long struggle to do that. And it took a war, one of the bloodiest wars that we have ever known in our history, to bring that about. I'm talking about the Civil War of 1863. So it took a bloody war just to get people included in the Constitution of the United States. And we don't want to have a war again to include those who are still left out. So if we want to avoid that kind of history, and we want to avoid that, then we got to understand that there are still people in America today. There are still people in North Carolina today, still people in Asheville today who are left out. And there are still people who want to keep them out. And those of us who follow the example and teachings of Dr. Martin Luther King have to realize that we have to come together to make sure that in America, nobody is left out. That America is big enough and rich enough and has enough resources to make sure that everybody is included. Nobody in the richest country in the world ought to wake up in the morning with nothing to eat. Or try to go home at night, no home to go to. We can do better than that, and we must do better than that. And that's what Dr. King was all about. He knew that America had resources enough to feed the hungry. He knew that America had resources enough to heal the sick and to make sure that sick people could get the help that they need. He knew at the same time that America was a great country in spite of all the limitations of its beginnings, but he also knew that America could be greater than that. And America could be a place where people could know that they could achieve to the full limits of their ability without regard to the color of their skin. What he may not have known is what we become more and more aware of every day, that it is not going to happen quickly. It is a long, hard struggle, but it's going to happen. It has to happen, and we're going to make it happen by following the example of Dr. King and others who have devoted their lives and themselves, their fortunes, and all that they have to making sure America delivers on its promise for liberty, freedom, and justice for all. It's that simple. But we have to understand it, we have to stay focused on it, we have to believe that it can happen. So moves like a simple resolution saying, let's look at reparations and see what this history has brought us. It's not like we had a civil war and slavery was ended and everybody lived happily ever after. What happened was we had a civil war, a bloody civil war, and for the first time we really began to realize that we've got to work together to make a difference. We can come together, we can make change, but it's going to take effort, it's going to take commitment, it's going to take money and resources, and it's going to take a whole change of attitude for America to make true on its promise. So that was back in 1866, or 67 I think it was, that this bloody war was over. And we've been at it since then, trying to reach that point where all people in America can wake up in the morning and have something to eat, can go to sleep at night in a home that gives them light and shelter and heat, and all just the comfort of life. And that can be done, that should be done, and as Martin Luther King told us and inspired us, that must be done if ever we're going to live up to what we claim to be as a country. And you can't do it. I'm as delighted as I am and impressed as I am to be in this room. And I'm telling you, it is probably the most remarkable breakfast I've ever been to. You see all of these people sitting down, having breakfast together, talking together, enjoying each other together, experiencing this wonderful entertainment together, and listening to people who are committed to these goals and ideals together. It is a wonderful experience. It seems like just something you take for granted, looking about and seeing the happy faces of people who are full from a good breakfast gathered in this room. But it's remarkable. I do not know of another event. I think I heard it. This event is the second largest Martin Luther King Jr. celebration in the country. I think Atlanta, or maybe. And so we're still on the way, and we can get there. And by electing leaders both locally, and I didn't realize until today that since I left town, they're all women on the city council. But we have people who are devoted to making a difference in our society. One of them, I'm told you can't make campaign speeches up here, so I'm not going to campaign for Josh Stein. I'm just going to tell you that he's here, and I know from his being my adopted son, but what I didn't finish telling you is that as a result of that, the beginning of the law firm, Josh Stein's mother and father became the best friends of Barbara, my wife, who is no longer with us. And we've been that way ever since. So I look at Josh Stein as my son. So don't tell him about it. I campaign for him. But you will have choices to make. One of the biggest things that Dr. King advocated was the thing that makes us function as a democracy, and that is the right to vote. So we have that right. We have that right, but the right to vote means nothing if you don't vote. And if you vote, then we can ultimately create the society that we work together every day to try to create. So very soon, you're going to go to the polls and you're going to see the names of people. And among those names, you're going to see Josh Stein. And I can't tell you who to vote for, but I will tell you one thing. I'm going to vote for Josh Stein. And Josh told me he might be in this area. We were talking earlier. And he's on the DS, and I saw his name on. I don't know what he's doing here, but he's here. And I'm glad to see it. I took a little liberty there, but I believe in my heart that we can have better leaders, and I think we have an example of an opportunity to do that when we know that Josh Stein, whatever he's doing, he's busy campaigning and all that kind of stuff. And he's not campaigning here, but he took the time to come and spend with you. And I hope you will think about that when you go to the ballot box. Now then, I've talked about everything except what I should have. So all I'm going to do is just tell you that it is a joy to my heart to just come in this room and see 1,000 or more people gathered together for the purpose of commemorating the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King and helping to make that dream that he so beautifully and dramatically expressed in his I Have a Dream speech in Washington. That wasn't the only time he did it. In Detroit, he done it before. I digress a little bit, but when Martin got up to speak in Washington at the 1963 March on Washington, he was not planning to make the I Have a Dream speech. But as he was going to the podium, I'm told, Mahalia Jackson sang, said, tell them about the dream, Martin. Tell them about the dream. And Mahalia Jackson's urging and her words resulted in one of the most famous speeches that have ever been made in our country and in the world, the I Have a Dream speech. So Martin was not planning to do that speech. But with the delivery that he gave and the power with which he spoke, he would have thought he'd worked on it for months and days and even years. And there he was, doing that speech at the urging of Mahalia Jackson, who said, tell them about the dream. And he did. And one reason we're here today is that he told us about the dream. because we're here to try to make that dream come true. And when I saw the young lady who spoke earlier about the scholarships that are being created as a result of the work of this organization and others like it, then it said to me in its own title, the dream is still coming true. And soon enough, we're going to stop dreaming and live the things we're dreaming about. So I want to say to you, I simply want to say to you that it is a great honor and a pleasure for me to have this opportunity to come back to my hometown and participate in such a glorious gathering as we see here today. This is a major part of giving life to the dream and making that dream come true. So I share with you the dream, and I look forward to going beyond the dream and sharing with you and all of my colleagues in Asheville and Charlotte, North Carolina, and throughout the United States and throughout the world, throughout Africa and Europe. I look forward to one day coming together with you, coming together with them, when we're not dreaming, but we are living the dream. And that's what this is about. So I thank you for that.
Thank you for those insightful words, Attorney Ferguson. And as you spoke, I really thought about Langston Hughes and his poem, A Dream Deferred, which means that we must keep on working because, as your inspiring words tell us, we have to be effective with our protests, and that calls for training so we can have a clear purpose and a focused participation in practice. Without training, without knowledge, we remain unclear, remain unfocused, and then we are ineffective. So again, thank you. And so now I'm going to ask your son, the Honorable Josh Stein, the Attorney General of North Carolina, to come to the podium because he has a special announcement.
Good morning, everybody. This is a glorious day, and you all are a glorious sight. I want to thank Dr. Simmons and the Martin Luther King Jr. Association of Asheville and Buncombe County for all the incredible work. A breakfast of 1,100 people does not just happen. This is incredible, and thank you for all that you have done. You know, just east of here, in Black Mountain, back on June 20th, 1964, Martin Luther King Jr. and his closest advisors began a 3-day retreat to find solace, to reflect, and to plan for the future. And here we are, almost 60 years to the day, 1 week shy, reflecting and honoring his life and legacy and recommitting ourselves to come together to build a better and brighter future for all North Carolinians and all Americans. Martin Luther King Jr. helped show us the way to move our nation closer to our beloved community and forward in our commitment to civil rights. King and other leaders inspired young people all across this country to assume that mantle of leadership for the next generation. Young people like James Ferguson. Fergie, that was a fantastic speech. Thank you for that. Let's all give him another round of applause. And I want to say that in addition to Fergie and Taj, I have another family member here. My wife Anna is here with us this morning. So thank you for We've heard about Fergie's work to organize young people here in Asheville and bring young black and white students together at a time when that in and of itself was a radical notion. But they did that, and they helped to make this city a better place, and we are all the beneficiaries because of that. That was just the beginning of a lifelong pursuit of justice for Fergie, and it's why, as he told us, he became an attorney. And he said in 1967 that he and my father Adam joined with Julius Chambers in Charlotte to form North Carolina's first integrated law firm. I did not know why Stein was second in the line, but now I do. He must have given you a tricky quarter. And over the many years, they won path-breaking victories in our nation's legal battle against discrimination and for equality. Victories in school desegregation here in Asheville, among other places, but all across North Carolina. Victories in employment non-discrimination. Victories in integration of restaurants and other forms of public accommodation. Victories in voting rights. Victories that have made this state a better place. They never backed down from doing what was right, not even when someone firebombed their law office and burned it to the ground. They knew that the fight for justice was both urgent and enduring. And Fergie understands that it's up to every new generation to carry on that mantle for justice. That's why he's done trial advocacy at Harvard Law School, at North Carolina Central Law School. He founded that first trial advocacy program in South Africa before the end of apartheid to train both black and white attorneys on how to better represent their clients. Fergie has dedicated his life to service, to education, to justice, because he knows that we can be more than what we have been. Fergie is one of my heroes, and this morning it gives me immense pleasure and incredible pride to present to him an award, and he asked why the heck I was on the program, to present to him an award reserved for people who made significant contributions to the state of North Carolina and their communities through their exemplary service and exceptional accomplishments. And it is my honor to present to our friend, our hero, James Ferguson, the Order of the Long Leaf Pine. Congratulations, Fergie, and thank you for your tireless commitment to our state and our people. It's a wonderful recognition, and the main authority it grants is the right to give the following toast anywhere in the free world. Here's to the land of longleaf pine, the summer land where the sun doth shine, where the weak grow strong and the strong grow great. Here's to down home, the old North State.
Congratulations, Attorney Ferguson, on that honor, highest honor we have in the state. It's well deserved. And now is really a great time for another musical selection to keep that feeling of celebration going forward. So I'm asking the Just Us Unity Choir to perform I Want to Know What Love Is.
take a little time to think things over. Gotta read between the lines. Guess I need you when I'm older. This mountain I'm sky. Guess I can run from your shoulder. Through the clouds I see the sun. Give me arms like those golden. It's my life. There's been heartache and pain. I don't know if I can face it again. I can't stop now. I've traveled so far. Change this lonely
What's up, George? How you doing?
I've got nowhere left to hide. Looks like nothing's finding
And as you've done all this morning, thank you, choir, for that selection. Inspirational singing and and so again, as we come to the end of our time together this morning, please, this is just 4 celebrations we're doing in these next couple of days. Tomorrow at 5:30 we have our annual candlelight service and award ceremony at the Trinity Episcopal Church at 60 Church Street, downtown Asheville. All these programs, events you can find in your journal. Also remember that Monday morning we have our peace march and rallies that starts with a fellowship service at St. James AME Church. Starts at 11:30. St. James
No, I
is
did see
located
it,
at
but I didn't know
Woodward Street,
it's really
East
difficult.
End neighborhood.
You're good, you're good.
Our celebration committee member, as I told you, Apostle Inez Davis Ray will be our speaker. And right as she concludes, we'll leave St. James at 12:30 and march up to Pack Square. And at 1 o'clock, we will have our rally. And I'll be the speaker at the rally. So you kind of, I guess, have a preview of everything to come. But also, this might be the main thing everybody was wondering and asking about. Yes, St. James is still having their annual fish fry. And so it started at 11, and I was talking to the church. I said, make sure you let everybody know that we are having it. Starts at 11, and we will be frying the fish till all the fish is gone. So I know a lot of people always keep that in mind. But also, as we have always done with that rally, is also when we collect food and other non-perishable items for the community. At St. James, as you come in for the fellowship and before you leave for the rally, there will be barrels there that we are collecting donations of food and non-perishable items for Manna Food Bank, but also for St. James East End Valley Street Food Pantry. So it's another way to help the community. Also, if you don't have cans, you can also give a donation to the St. James Food Pantry. If you write a check and you put it there in the envelope, just put Food Pantry on the memo line. And they always ask that, again, a lot of people, as you give donations like that, say, I'm going to clear out my pantry. Make sure that whatever you're going to donate is not out of date. Don't just clear out your pantry. Make sure it's not out of date. And also think about it, again, one reason, how accessible is it? It's a lot more accessible of cans or pop tops and not something that needs to be a can opener, because it might go to someone who does not have such a thing, especially if they are not in a home. So please keep those things in mind, and as we have talked about over and over again as you leave here, keep in mind one of the main reasons we have here is for the scholarship fund. And so as you know, as you've seen the envelopes and cards, donation cards there on the table, that you can put a donation in there into the envelope, and so even as you leave, the ushers will be there. You can give it to them and put it into those bags, or again, follow right there that's on the yellow sheet and go to the website and be able to give electronically. Again, marching orders. And for the candlelight service, we want to stress that our speaker this year is Becky Stone. So again, if you want to come, people know about Ms. Stone and how she is a powerful, motivational speaker. Again, the candlelight service starts at 5:30 there at Trinity Church. And so as we get ready to leave, as I'll ask for the benediction from Apostle Inez Davis Ray, she comes up here. She is the pastor of God's Ray of Hope non-denominational church. As she does the benediction and finishes, we will then ask that everyone join in with the choir as we sing Lift Every Voice and sing what was written by James Weldon Johnson, because that song always has a purpose, because it is the anthem of the movement. So again, I ask if you will please stand for the benediction and then join with the choir singing this anthem of the movement. And if you want to know the words to the song, you can find it on page 8 of the souvenir journal. Remember, as you leave, there is a resource table as you go up with 2024 applications for the scholarship fund that you are giving to. They can be found there along with other resources found in our community. Pastor.
Thank you, and I again want to say my congratulations to my native brother, Bobo Ferguson, for the wonderful keynote address on today. And also, excuse me, remembering the life and for whom we come to celebrate today, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Remember that he was a reverend. He believed in the power of God. So with that being said, I want to read to you from the Word of God found in Matthew chapter 5, which is known as the Beatitudes, because I want you to leave today. And as a minister of the gospel, as a pastor, I tell people, don't leave until you receive your blessing. Because when you go from this place, you will encounter many conflicts. Because in this world, you will have trials and tribulations. But Jesus said, I've overcome the world. The reading of the scripture in Matthew chapter 5 says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Excuse me. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Listen, blessed are you when they revile you and persecute you and say all kinds of evil against you falsely for my sake. And the last of the verses that I will read to you says, rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. May the Lord bless you as I pray this divine protection over your lives. I pray your life brings joy to the Lord and those around you experience that joy. May the Lord be gracious to you and show you favor in every area or in your lives, from man and also from God. I pray the Lord gives you peace that exceeds your understanding. And I bless you in Jesus' name.